Good morning and welcome to Sunday service. It is Sunday, February the 7th, 2021. Happy to have you here this morning. We're going to start by having a little bit of quiet time. I'm going to ring the chapel, the temple bell here, this beautiful bowl. And I'm going to play a chant for a few minutes. And I'd like you to just let the sound work on you. Take a few breaths and ease your way into that space. And the chant is called Joto Prem, and it says, it's written in your heart and all around. It's written in your heart how to love, and destiny is on your brow. So it's written in your heart how to love, and destiny is in your brow. The answers you seek are all around. All you have to do is bow. So if you would receive the sound of the temple bell and also the chant, and let yourself bow and close your eyes and feel the feeling of the vibration and the song and the chant. And we're going to start that way with a little bit of meditation to get ourselves prepared for our service for today, which is about sacred balance. So let's begin with that.
It's written in your heart how to love,
your destiny is on your brow. The answers you seek are all around. All you have to do is bow. All you have to do is bow. It's written in your heart how to love, and your destiny is on your brow. The answers you seek are all around. All you have to do is bow. All you have to do is bow. I hope that got you into a nice relaxed state. And listening to this chant, Joto Prem, which talks about the connection between your head and your heart. It's written in your heart how to love, and your destiny is on your brow. The answers you seek are all around. All you have to do is bow. So in traditions, religious and mystical traditions, spiritual traditions, oftentimes we put our hands together and we bow, put our hands at our heart and bow. And there are other ways that we show that we are giving up our head for the sake of our heart. For example, when people prostrate themselves before the Pope, lie down on the ground, or in the yogic position of child pose, when you put your head down below your heart, those are all postures of the body saying, I submit my head to my heart. I defer to my heart. So when we're talking today about sacred balance, we're going to talk about what that means and why, the same as on my cross here at the center of the cross, there's a green stone, color of the heart. And the image that I put on the Facebook page is of the masculine and feminine, moon and sun, day and night, female and male, and them coming together. And in the center is the Star of David, which we've talked a lot about with the tetrahedron, the Star of David, or the double tetrahedron. So what's this got to do with God? What's this got to do with a Sunday service? It has to do with remembering who we are and remembering that our heart is the center of our being. So if you think about when people genuflect, they're touching their brow, touching their heart, and then they're touching their shoulders. So this is the sign of the cross. Has many, interestingly, many, I don't know if I call them applications, but there's an article I read this morning, 21 blessings you attract by making the sign of the cross. And it's talking about sealing yourself to Christ when you make this sign. So I am a big fan of the mysteries of spirituality, of the esoteric symbolism and meaning of the things that we do. So if we think about ourselves as beings, spiritual beings in material form, then we can be looking at this part of the cross, the one that goes up and down. And we can be looking at bringing spirit into the flesh and bowing down our head or our thinking mind, which is the masculine aspect of our being, to our heart, which is the feminine aspect of our being. And in many spiritual and religious traditions, it talks about how we have to move from here to here, how this is the longest journey from our head to our heart. And as you know, I do a lot of counseling, I do a lot of spiritual direction for people, and I often find people having a really hard time moving from their head to their heart. Our culture is very skewed to the masculine, left brain, heart, head centered, mind centered, brain centered, and what happens is the lack of exposure, let's say, and facility with our hearts, and the lack of understanding, or the lack of safety, let's say, in the vulnerability it takes to go into our heart, creates a divide. And many, many people have this divide where they kind of live from their neck up and they don't spend a lot of time down here because this is uncharted territory for a lot of people. And it doesn't always make sense to the brain what's in the heart. But what is in the heart, as Ajit sings, it's written in your heart how to love. And what we know about Christ, about Jesus, about Mother Mary, is that they came to teach us how to love. So we have these aspects of ourselves, spirit and matter, and then we have the feminine and the masculine. So the way it works with our brain, is opposite our body. So the right brain, left body is the feminine. The left brain, right body is the masculine. We could say Mary and Jesus. We could look at it that way. And when we're crossing our body like this, we're making a connection between those two parts of ourselves, the other arms of the cross. So I know that was a lot of kind of esoteric information. So let's begin again. From spirit into flesh. So Father God, Mother Earth, this way. The heart is at the center of those two because we're beings made of both matter and spirit. So the heart is the place where matter and spirit come together. And then there's the feminine and the masculine, and they come together also at the heart, where they join together the opposites and create this sense of oneness, sealing ourselves for the Christ, sealing ourselves for the full embodiment of the spirit in matter. And why does that matter that we do that? Well, most of religious traditions have us leaving ourselves to go look to a deity outside of ourselves, which leaves us unworthy. It leaves us less than. It leaves us having to prove ourselves as beings that deserve love or life or anything else. And that is I'll say, a form of blasphemy to say God is outside of us. Certainly God is in everything, but that would mean that God is in us as well. So trying to find a sacred balance is reminding ourselves that God is inside of us. Jesus taught us that. Mother Mary teaches us through love. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. My Father and I are one. So what gets us out of balance in today's world is that we're leaning so far into the left brain masculine model of existence that we forget our heart. We've forgotten our heart. So we've become intelligent, but somewhat heartless, which of course results in the kinds of things that we see happening in the world that are atrocious and inhuman. Because if we remember that we belong to one another, as Mother Teresa says, we have no peace because we've forgotten that we belong to one another. So here at the heart of the matter, at the heart of ourselves, at the heart of the gospel is this marriage between the masculine and feminine, between spirit and matter. And that is where we bring heaven into earth, through our hearts. That's what we do in the sacraments. We give up the things that we misunderstand for a greater truth to be deposited in us. So I have next to me here the monstrance with the consecrated host in it, and that is the demonstration, the ritual demonstration, the sacramental demonstration of bringing spirit into matter. And then we take it into ourselves as another way of receiving spirit in matter. So I chose a scripture reading today. It's not from the Gospels, it's from Ephesians. So remembering that Ephesians and the other epistles, or the letters that were written mostly by St. Paul to different people in different areas that are in the Bible after the four Gospels. In Ephesians, he talks about the relationship between husbands and wives. And I know I'm going to open a can of worms here, but bear with me. And this is one of the letters that conservative Christians use to tell husbands they should lord it over their wives, and wives they should submit to their husbands. So I want to start by saying that's not what I'm saying. But I do want to look at this from an esoteric and mystical perspective, from a merging of the spirit and matter and the masculine and feminine within us, that cross that seals into us the Christ consciousness. So here's what Paul says in Ephesians. Wives, submit yourselves, and I'm going to do this. Wives, submit yourselves to your husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands. Next paragraph. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with waters through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body, just as Christ does the church, for we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. Christ and the church. However, each one of you must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife respect her husband. That's Ephesians chapter 5:22. Now, we can see in human terms why people would use that against men and women, can't we? But if we're thinking about it this way, husbands, love your wives, wives, respect your husbands, then we can look at this mystery, as Paul notes it, and say, what does it mean to have those two parts of ourselves aligned and in sacred balance? We can have the masculine mind, which is decisive and active, and which is meant to be a provider and protector for the feminine. We can have the feminine imbalance, which is receptive, sensitive, nurturing and nourishing, providing a home for the masculine. We can look at it that way. We can look at, in the yogic tradition, the three channels of our being, the masculine and feminine, moving in a spiral pattern like our DNA around the central channel of our being. And when we have this balance of those forces, then our energy goes up the central channel, and then it connects us through the spirit, from the earth through the spirit. So all of these energetic things, all these esoteric mysteries have been studied all across cultures and all across religions, and they're all saying the same thing, which is we need to move from our mentation down to our heart and hold sacred what is in our heart. And then our heart is meant to trust the safety established by the mind or the masculine when it is in balance. So again, in our external world and a lot of relationships, these things get out of balance. If we had a relationship between, let's for example say a man and a woman, and the man was reverential towards the woman and provided for her and protected her, it would be so simple for that woman to respect that man and to be free to be herself and nourish and nurture and create and all the things that the feminine does. And the man would be respected and cared for and loved, and the woman would be protected and provided for and held sacred. So if we think about that between our heart and our mind, oftentimes people don't want to feel things because it's vulnerable territory, and there isn't a safe masculine container to be vulnerable. There isn't a safe masculine container to have our hearts be genuine, raw, and open. And so we use the faculties of our mind or the masculine to push it down so that we don't have to figure out how to manage it. Instead of saying, this is the most sacred part of me, I need to provide a space for it that defers to its truth. And here at the center of the cross our hearts, is the place where all of those things come together. Thus, the seat of our soul, the home of our spirit, the entry point into the world of spirit. So as mystics, we want to get very familiar and comfortable with our hearts and learn the language of the heart, which is the language of feelings. It's the language of energy. It's not the language of thought and not the language of reason and figuring things out, but it is still essential to our existence as spirits in the material world. Jesus died on the cross, showing us what the heart can do, the power of the heart in forgiveness, in compassion, in mercy, in humility, the power of the heart, in vulnerability. And what happened? They did everything they did. They persecuted him, they killed him, and still he rose. Still he rose because he knew the power of that truth. Now, if he was just using his head, he might run away from those Pharisees. He might find a place to hide or use his powers to overpower them. But instead, he deferred to his heart. He deferred to the truth. He deferred to something stronger and greater than what we might perceive in the outside world. So how does this work individually? First, we have to figure out how to make that journey from our head to our heart, by trusting the masculine and feminine beings that have come to help us. So if we think about Jesus as the head, then we can say Jesus is safe. He provides us a space to get to know our hearts. He gives us compassion and forgiveness and mercy so we can go in there without fear of shame and without fear of reprimand. And then we can go to our hearts with Mother Mary in the gentleness of her spirit, who wants to hold us and nurture us to teach us how to do that for ourselves and others. And then we have this relationship between the feminine, supported by the beautiful gentleness of Mother Mary, and the masculine, supported by the strength and respect and container provided by Jesus. And then we can relax. And what is all of spirituality about? It's about reuniting with yourself, reuniting with this essence of yourself inside. So you can genuinely be yourself. You can vulnerably be yourself. You can come to know yourself and feel the feelings that you have pushed aside or stored up inside of you that haven't been addressed. It's safe to do that. It's safe to bring your genuine self to other people who know about keeping that space safe. And it's a place where we can gather a lot of strength in ourselves when we come to trust our hearts. And then when we go out into the world where people aren't maybe so sensitive to that and maybe not so inclined to be gentle or protective with our hearts, we have our own masculine side to make boundaries and protect us from what other people might do to harm this more vulnerable part of ourselves. And it's vulnerable because it's super sensitive. It's also very powerful. So our hearts are a territory that we need to come into balance with. The space between spirit and matter, the space, the merging of the masculine and feminine in our own selves. And then from there, we can create, we can love, we can express ourselves, we can receive others, we can make a safe space for other people to be themselves. And then we're creating heaven on earth because we're bringing the heart and the spirit into the planet, into our own being and into the planet itself. So that's what sacred balance is about. How do we get there? We spend time looking in. We spend time bowing to the heart. How's it going in here? What's happening? What needs to be heard and validated and received in us? What needs to be shared with other people who are safe and understand the sacred nature of our heart? And how do we do that in a world that is pretty rough? It's pretty rough on those tender places. Well, first we make a safe space inside of us through our meditation and prayer practices, that help us to go in. Then we look for our backlog of feelings. Oftentimes these are in the form of what in the counseling world we call inner child or inner children, the backlog of our feelings that have not been respected and listened to, have not been cared for, have not been loved as Jesus loves the church. They've been denied, pushed down, oppressed, abused, first by others, then by our own internalization of that process. And so we have to go in there and start excavating the old wounds and the old bones of ourselves so that we can bring them to the surface and clear out the past. Once the past is cleared out, then we have a fresh start. And then it gets to be very exciting. Who am I now and how will I live now, knowing that I am at the intersection of heaven and earth right here. And so I let my physical form be guided by the Spirit, and together we love. Together we are in relationship. Together we're doing our work and our responsibilities to family and friends and to the world at large. And then it becomes very simple because we stay up to date with our feelings. We clear them out. We recognize them. We sit with them. We validate them. We speak them as we feel comfortable and confident to do that to people, with people in the outside world. We surround ourselves with people who we feel comfortable and confident to be able to share those things with. There's a passage in the Bible that says, "Don't throw your pearls before swine." So that's a warning to say, when you have the most vulnerable parts of yourself, you don't want to throw those in front of people who have no concept or ability to receive them, because they'll just get stomped on. And then that will add insult to injury, and that's more healing that has to be done. So best to find someone who's safe, someone who can see you, can receive you, can validate your feelings, and also help you turn toward a higher knowing that says you are loved already. And so even if people of the earth who are damaged and hurt and sometimes mean don't see that and don't receive that, it doesn't mean that it's true that you're not loved, because love comes from the world of spirit. It doesn't come from people. And then when people learn how to love, more and more of us learn how to love, more and more of us are walking around in that sacred balance of remembering, I am bringing heaven into earth by having my spirit show up here in my form. I am doing the dance of the masculine and feminine, respecting my heart, respecting my head, using both of them to express, to feel, to make boundaries, to interact, to enjoy. Then we walk around being a light in the world, because this part of us is lit up. Our heart chakra is lit up. We're walking in balance. People feel it. They feel it as peace. They feel it as knowing. They feel it as safety. And then they can bring their true selves to that beacon and feel at ease. So our job is to get ourselves into sacred balance and then hold that tone so that people in the world will hear it and feel it and see it. And then they'll start to resonate with it. And our peace and balance will draw peace and balance from them. It will draw their vulnerability to the surface with the safety that we provide by saying, I am someone who knows how this all works, and I will stand in strength, protection, and reverence of your process while you're coming to know that about yourself. And this is the thing that the world has been missing in terms of the balance between masculine and feminine. We've lived in a patriarchal society for a long time, and it has done a disservice to men and women. Even though men have more power, they don't have more connection with their heart, which is the best part of them. And women have had to learn to set aside their heart in order to succeed in whatever fashion in a masculine-driven world. So if our world is going to transform, we have to transform. Inside of us, we have to transform. And in doing that, and coming into sacred balance, and in being that in the world, we have an opportunity to have our world transform into a balanced world that does both of those things, that provides and protects and nourishes and nurtures. Think about that. Think about that world where we have every person cared for in mind and in heart, where people's feelings matter, where their needs matter, and where we're not using our intelligence to to have a means to an end that is hurtful to people. So the balance is the key. So what about the sacred part of it? Why is it sacred? Because that's the place in us where we can bring the sacrament of truth, the sacrament of love in our own hearts out into the world. So we create sacred balance and sacred space in us, and then we carry it into the world, and wherever we go, we're creating sacred space by being conscious of who we are and who every other being is. So that kind of balance is sorely needed in individuals and in the world. And it is the reason why Jesus and Mary came, to save our souls, to remind us who we are, to restore us to balance and peace and love and compassion, to get us ready to bring heaven into earth, and to help us remember that we are eternal beings that were made from love. So we stop acting otherwise towards ourselves and towards others. So I would like to close today by having you close your eyes and reach into your heart. And if it helps for you to put your hand on your heart like this, or your palm on your heart, so that you can feel your own heart center. And I'm going to ring the temple bell again and lead you through a short meditation on the heart. So take a few deep breaths and walk yourself down from your head to your heart. Imagine that you are perching yourself on your heart. And this temple bowl has a vibration that is meant for your heart, so you can let this sound open your heart. And breathing deeply and relaxing your mind and your body. Let yourself get into a space of knowing that does not have thought associated with it. A space of witnessing, observing, and absorbing whatever energies you find in your heart as you focus your attention there. Let's begin with a feeling of hopefulness. Hopefulness that the mysteries of life can all be solved through the heart, through the wisdom of the heart, through the place where spirit and matter meet, the balance point between the masculine and feminine. That is the doorway to truth and to love and life. As we let ourselves be hopeful, we relax. We can look a little more deeply into our hearts. And there at the back of our heart, in our heart of hearts, we see that familiar doorway, that archway that leads to the inner temple, where all things can be known, where all insight can be gained. Feel the draw of your heart pulling you towards the doorway of your inner self. And let yourself walk down that familiar corridor now, with the channels of water on each side, and the throne there awaiting you. And let your heart feel gratitude for knowing there's a place you can go to understand things, to gain insight and truth. And also a sense of joyful anticipation for how that knowing will serve your life, will resolve your problems and confusion, will show you the truth about yourself. And as you take your seat on that throne and you look back towards the doorway, we invite Jesus and Mary to come and join us, each one of us. We commune with them in spirit as we do in the flesh when we take communion, offering them up what is in our heart that we might be confused about, that we might have a wound that needs their gracious healing. So whatever is in your heart today, offering it up to Jesus and Mary, trusting that you know the state of being of your own heart, trusting that Jesus and Mary are safe to give your heart to, both for protection and for healing. Commune with them now and receive the graces that they offer to you. And how emptied of your concerns, we ask Jesus and Mary to fill your heart with love and peace and light, to fill the empty, the broken places in you, the sore spots, to heal the wounds, to make you new by their grace, by their power. Feel your heart fill up, the spaces in you filled with love and light. Feel gratitude rising and joy rising in your heart for the blessing of these beings who came to love us into wholeness, into holiness, that we might be restored to ourselves, to the sacred balance of being whole, of expressing our divinity through our material form. And now bringing the energy of the blessing into your flesh, feeling your body, feeling Jesus and Mary, each with a hand on one of your shoulders, blessing your body with the knowledge, the knowing of your divinity, so that both in mind, heart, body, and spirit, we remember ourselves. The body blessed and sacred, the heart blessed and sacred, the mind blessed and sacred, the spirit blessed and sacred. And in this balance, we stretch our consciousness from the throne of our inner being back to our physical form, leaving the door open in our heart to remember ourselves as spirit, to draw the spirit into the form of our body, of our human and earthly consciousness, and also into the consciousness of the earth, our mother, pouring love into the earth for form, for the building blocks of matter that make up our body. This vehicle through which we get to love, through which we get to enjoy the senses and the beauty of the earth. So loving the mother and loving what the mother gave us, this body. Breathing deeply, the inspiration, drawing spirit into matter. Breathing deeply and being grateful for this physical form that allows us to be here with one another, allows us to commune with people in life, to love them, to learn with them, to grow with them, to support them. And breathing deeply now, open your eyes and be blessed. And go forth into this day in sacred balance, remembering yourself, opening your heart, being free from fear, that you might step forward in courage and in love and in the grace of Jesus and Mary. Be blessed.